If there is one belief I wish more women over 60 would stop carrying like a burden, it is this idea that if the weight is not coming off, the answer must be more suffering, more discipline, more hunger, more guilt, more starting fresh on Monday, more trying to punish the body into changing. I want to say this gently, but very clearly. If your body has changed in midlife or beyond, and you feel like the old rules are no longer working, that does not automatically mean you are doing something wrong. It does not mean you are lazy. It does not mean you have no willpower. And it certainly does not mean your only path forward is to eat less and suffer more. Sometimes it means your body is asking for a different kind of support. I care deeply about this because I know what it feels like when your body suddenly stops responding the way it used to. When perimenopause hit me in my early 50s, I felt as though I had been dropped into a completely unfamiliar landscape. My sleep fell apart. My anxiety rose. I was waking up in the middle of the night with my heart racing. I gained weight that did not seem to match how I was living. And I remember that feeling of looking in the mirror and thinking, I do not understand what works anymore. That moment is so vulnerable for women, because when a woman reaches that point, the world usually offers her the same tired advice. Eat less, work out harder, stop making excuses, count every bite, be more disciplined. But what if the real issue is not a lack of discipline? What if the real issue is that the body is tired of chaos? That is what I want to talk about tonight, because I do believe weight can change without a woman living at war with herself. I do believe the body can become more responsive again. But for many women over 60, that begins not with punishing exercise, but with rhythm, real nourishment, better appetite stability, less grazing, less blood sugar drama, less all-day undereating followed by evening desperation. I once heard a story about an older man who had spent years gaining weight, feeling sluggish, and living with one health issue after another. What struck me was not that he suddenly became obsessed with exercise. He did not. What changed first was the way he ate. He began having more structured meals, more fiber, more whole foods, more satisfaction, less snacking, less chaos. And as his body became lighter and steadier, he naturally found himself moving more. He did not force the movement first. The movement became easier because his body felt better. That matters so much, because so many women believe they must become athletes before their body will cooperate. But often the first step is much quieter than that. It is not punishment, it is nourishment. One of the biggest problems I see in women over 60 is not simply overeating. It is undernourishment disguised as control. A woman starts the day with coffee and toast, maybe a little cereal, maybe fruit. Maybe something she calls light. Then by mid-morning, she is hungry again. Lunch is a salad with almost no protein. Afternoon comes and the body is crashing. Then cravings hit. Evening arrives and she is exhausted, emotionally depleted, and finally hungry enough to eat everything in sight. And then she blames herself. But sweetheart, that is not failure. That is physiology. If your meals are not satisfying, your body will keep asking for more. Not because it is greedy, because it is trying to get its needs met. And I think this is where so much weight loss messaging has harmed women. It taught us to fear satisfaction. It taught us to think a good meal is one that leaves us slightly deprived. But a body that never feels fed is a body that will keep looking for relief. So let us begin with the first thing that matters: satisfaction. I want your meals to actually calm the body down. I want them to contain enough protein, enough fiber, enough healthy fat, and enough substance that your nervous system is not spending the whole day asking, is that all we're getting? Because once that question quiets down, a lot starts to change. Hunger becomes less dramatic. Cravings lose some of their force. Energy becomes steadier. Even mood improves. This is especially important at breakfast. So many women over 60 are trying to run a second half of life body on a first half of life breakfast. A muffin, a slice of toast, a banana, coffee, and good intentions. And then they wonder why by 10:30 they are fading or thinking about food again. Your body now needs more support than that. Maybe breakfast looks like Greek yogurt with chia, berries, and nuts. Maybe it is eggs with vegetables and avocado. Maybe it is oats with protein added, not just a bowl of starch by itself. Maybe it is leftovers from dinner, because honestly, the body does not care whether your nourishing meal looks like breakfast food or not. The point is not perfection. The point is stability. And yes, carbohydrates are part of this conversation, but I want to talk about them in a sane, grown woman way. I do not believe carbs are evil. I do not believe every woman needs to go extremely low carb. And I do not believe fear is a wise nutrition strategy. But I do believe many women feel better when they become more intentional about the kinds of carbohydrates they eat and the way those carbohydrates are built into meals. A refined carbohydrate eaten by itself often leaves a woman hungry again very quickly. A more fiber-rich carbohydrate paired with protein and fat tends to land very differently. That is the difference between eating in a way that feeds the body and eating in a way that keeps appetite on a roller coaster. So I want you to stop asking, how do I cut every carb? And start asking, which foods leave me steady and which ones leave me chasing? That is a much wiser question. For many women, that means less sugar, less mindless snacking, less grazing on crackers, pastries, and healthy little bites that never truly satisfy. And it means more foods that actually support the body. Beans, lentils, vegetables, fruit, potatoes in amounts that work for you. Whole grains that truly satisfy you if you tolerate them well. Meals that are built, not scattered. That brings me to another piece that matters more than people realize: meal timing. Now, I am not interested in turning every woman into a strict faster. I do not think one eating schedule fits every body, every medication, every hormone pattern, or every stage of life. But I do think many women do better when they stop eating in a random, constant way. The body likes rhythm, a real breakfast, a real lunch, a real dinner, or sometimes a lighter dinner. Maybe a planned snack if needed, but not endless nibbling all day long. Because when you are always eating little bits, but never truly sitting down to enough nourishment, appetite signals can become noisy and confusing. And then women say, I don't even know when I'm hungry anymore. Of course not. The body has not been allowed to settle. I also think evenings deserve special attention. So many women tell me that nights are their hardest time. They are good all day, then everything falls apart after dinner or while cleaning up the kitchen or while sitting in front of the television. And I always want to slow that down and ask, what happened earlier in the day? Were you truly fed? Did you get enough protein? Did you eat enough lunch? Were you running on stress and caffeine? Are you hungry for food or relief or comfort or rest? That is not a small question. Sometimes what looks like an evening problem is actually an all-day undernourishment problem. And once earlier meals become more substantial, evenings often soften. Not because you became more disciplined, because the body no longer has to shout. Now, I do think many women over 60 feel better when dinner is not the heaviest meal of the day. Not as a rule written in stone, but as a gentle experiment. A huge late-night meal often does not help sleep, digestion, or appetite regulation. Some women do beautifully with a more nourishing breakfast and lunch than a satisfying but lighter evening meal. Soup with protein, salmon and vegetables, beans and roasted vegetables, a hearty salad with chicken or lentils, something calming, not compensating. And can I say this with love? You do not have to earn your food with exercise. I know how deeply that message runs. Burn this to deserve that. Work off the meal. Punish the indulgence. No. Movement is a gift, not a debt payment. And here is what I have seen over and over again. When women begin eating in a way that actually supports their energy, they often become more able to move. Their walks feel easier. Their joints feel less angry. Their motivation returns. Their body feels worth caring for again. The desire to move often grows from feeling better, not from self-hatred. That is the kind of health I believe in. Not movement as punishment, movement as partnership. Walk because it helps your mind. Lift weights because muscle matters. Stretch because your body deserves to feel like home. Dance because joy counts too. But do not make exercise the price of being allowed to eat. I also want to say a word about extremes, because when women get frustrated, extremes can start to look very attractive. Very low carb, very low calorie, severe fasting, cutting out more and more foods until eating feels like fear wrapped in rules. And while some women do feel better reducing refined carbohydrates, especially if they were eating a lot of sugar and processed food before, extreme is not always wise. A woman over 60 needs enough protein, enough fiber, enough micronutrients, and enough overall nourishment to support muscle, hormones, bones, mood, and recovery. We are not just trying to make you smaller. We are trying to make you stronger. That is a very different goal. Because the real question after 60 is not just, can I lose weight? It is, can I lose weight in a way that protects my muscle, supports my sleep, stabilizes my energy, and lets me live a real life? That is the question I want you carrying forward. And I know there may be a woman listening right now who feels tired just hearing all of this. Tired of trying, tired of starting over, tired of feeling like her body is a problem to be solved. If that is you, I want to offer something softer and truer. Maybe your body does not need more punishment. Maybe it needs steadiness. Maybe it needs breakfast that actually feeds you. Maybe it needs lunch with enough protein. Maybe it needs fewer snacks that stir hunger and more meals that satisfy. Maybe it needs less chaos in the evening. Maybe it needs walking, sunlight, sleep, hydration, and less self-attack. You have spent your whole life caring for others. It is time to care for yourself. And sometimes that care begins not with a dramatic overhaul, but with asking better questions. Am I truly nourished? Am I satisfied at meals? Am I asking my body to run on too little? Am I calling deprivation discipline? Am I trying to solve a rhythm problem with more restriction? Those questions can change everything. Because weight loss is rarely just about calories in a vacuum. It is about the environment you create inside the body. Hunger signals, stress signals, muscle, sleep, hormones, blood sugar, daily habits, self-trust. And when those things begin to settle, the body often becomes more willing to change. Age is just the beginning, my love. Vibrant doesn't have an age limit. And if you have been telling yourself that the only way to lose weight is to suffer harder, I hope something in you softens tonight. Because no, you may not need more punishment. You may need more nourishment, more rhythm, more strength, more honesty, more care. And from that place, so much becomes possible. That is where healing begins. That is where steadiness returns. And that is often where real, sustainable weight loss finally starts.